Hello, Gravitrons. I'm more gravity. Let's play chess. Okay. I'm going to play a game in 10 minutes per side per game. Okay. Let's review that game. I'm going to forego the opportunity to offer a rematch. Um, it's the right thing for me right now, so that's what I'm going to do. Okay, I did make this one. Oh no, maybe not. Let's review this game. Kind of gonna go through it quickly. It featured a queen sacrifice. That's part of why I'm a bit shaken. Not like exactly shaken up, but I won a game because I made a queen sacrifice. Now right along here, there comes an opportunity for black. Yeah. So immediately after a3, I could have played an even better game. Oh, well, me for not being able to play exactly the best game. But here I'll show just this move, knight to b3, and I think now black is doing even better than before. Oh, hey man, not bad. Knight to b3 is an inaccuracy, so go back to the original game. Now I do wonder. I'm not gonna wonder too much about this. Am I? Pawn to a3. It's a waiting move. White would like to somehow take advantage of the weird, not necessarily weak, but the weird nature of black's king position, as well as get rooks involved quickly to respond to the fact that black's rook on h8 will have difficulty um, exerting his force on the game. It's not exactly clear what black is doing with the remainder of his development. Bishop e7 seems to make sense in a lot of ways to keep as many defenders on c5. And then maybe black will play rook to d8, but it's not clear. So in a position like this where, I mean, white has his trumps too. I have a 2-point material lead, but other than that, white's not doing all that bad. Besides material, he's got a safe king. Hishirde has a safe king, has a strong rook on c1. White's dark squared bishop. White's bishop is doing enough duty, well enough to counter for the fact that he is a bad bishop, but a moderately bad bishop given the pawn formations. And the knight at f2 both can counter incursions that I might otherwise be able to make ad nauseum with two knights following each other in this manner. Then it's good to have the knight on f2 to counter those potential incursions on d3 and e4 especially. So white's not out of this game. But black stands 2 pawns to better, and there's other dynamic factors in black's favor. So what does white do with all these, pretty darn good positional considerations and maybe a 2-pawn material deficit? Waiting move. Pawn to a3. Just waiting. We'll take away the b4 square, perhaps, in some lines in the future. it could support uh, b4, the push, but white's own push for b4 with his pawn, with his or they pawn, b4. It would support that push in a very strong way that could probably kick this knight in some circumstances. So a3 is a waiting move and a building move. It's not rock 'em, sock 'em, knock 'em dead, 37 moves from now. Like here's a double rook sacrifice and a bishop to boot, and 39 moves from now, we've simplified into a one, king and pawn end game. I'm kind of obliquely referring to Kasparov's Immortal. I studied that game, man. That serious genius. Anyway, so this move a3, and it kind of forces black to think, what is white attempting? I tried a4. I mostly want this knight on c5. He has to be either right there on c5 or down here in white's coffers, but instead his brother takes up the post on c5. There has to be a knight on c5 for this position to work for black. So I don't want b4. I thought b4 would be very strong for white, and a3 anticipating, if b4 then en passant, and if b3 then capture anyway if he tries to sort of sneak a second move to get the knight. So the point of a4 is just very strongly to prevent a queenside pawn storm. And it does weaken the b4 square. The move a4, I think I've been meaning to say a4, but it does a4 weakens the b4 square a bit, to the bishop coming in and being protected, and also having a say-so about black's side of the board. Nonetheless, I think that a4 is the way for black to keep the c5 knight right where he should be, right there on c5. And reducing white's options. What great options does white have here? You think of a piece, and one of the downsides of having your pieces well placed is zugzwang. If there's not much shaken in the position, your pieces are all optimally placed. You got to unoptimalize one of those pieces. Maybe one of those pieces as well. So anyway, that's maybe that's enough about a4. I think I'm glad to defend this move as a good move for black. Now with this knight's not being attacked, the only attack is being blocked, and that's tenuous. But I chose to play knight b6, as I just thought these knights should be very aggressive together. I have two pieces bearing down on the same knight here, but again, getting back to a4, knight c4 here is a great move. It's kind of help break things open, but there's no knight c4 if not for a4 earlier. Knight c4 with this pawn back at a6 or something, and then just you kick the knight right away. The knight comes in and gets zapped, or white chooses to go for this knight instead. However it is, the tactics don't work out unless my knight can make it to c4, and that in my mind, that justifies pawn to a4. All right, I don't like this move here by white. Rook to e1. No, you wouldn't really want to put your rook. You want to put your rook on d1. Yeah, so I'm critical of rook to e1 here. And maybe on d1 it blocks some kind of maneuver with the knight, but look at the d file, then having your rooks stand at, what would you call this, a horse's reach to each other. That's also, you might be able to duck out of it, but I wouldn't really want to tempt fate like that. I'm very critical of rook to e1. I don't want to get any more about it. So black has some problems of his own to solve here. Bishop e7 is a good way to do it. I mean, the other option was bishop g7, and it doesn't seem to be all that great by torch, and I agree, because the pawn at e5 is not one of our own pawns, but it's still defended by a pawn that's defended by a pawn that's defended by a rook. So g7 is not a great placement for the bishop. Bishop to e7, however, retains the bishop's current duty and strength of helping to guard c5, or guarding c5, and there's some more squares on the king side. Wahoo! Yeah, Yahoo! Yahoo! And anybody who's ever defeated the 1994 release of Sid Meier's Colonization knows exactly what I'm talking about with that Yahooing. But yeah, so then it also makes way for the rook on h8 to make to d8. And that's the big deal. These rooks are now connected. New York telephone. And then knight to d3 kind of seals the map, seals the deal, so to speak. Let's play this out. It's white's turn to move. What will the computer on maximum level play? Bishop to e7. Yeah, usually, I think what I'm testing here, I would have played king e7, by the way. Usually want to take the full piece first. And yeah, this is a bit of how to win when you're had a lot of material, but also against a super strong computer. You wouldn't have this rook on c8. You otherwise wouldn't travel to f4 here. is the black king will lose any kind of um, foot race against the most forward f pawn at f4. That's not f6, but with a rook on the board, with black having a rook on the board, that's not a problem. The rook will outrun any of those pawns. Okay. This is the same game played out all the way to checkmate. This game was a big deal. I mean, it featured a queen sacrifice for a 2-point material lead. That means a lot to me. I think I already said that. This is now past the point at which the real opponent resigned. I handled this endgame a little bit better. I'm cool through recapturing the knight. I think maybe I missed a way for white to sort of, a way for black to kind of hammer down on the position a little bit earlier. Okay, that just made it way more complicated. Let's go back to king h6. Okay, I've got that version, and I also want to demonstrate a principle here. So the move rook d3 check is just made out of sheer logic. To bring the king, as these squares are all occupied or controlled by black, then rook from a3 to d3 check makes a lot of sense, because in one manner or another, white must backpedal or at least move away from the d file closer towards the edge. And the computer made the best move available. I don't know, maybe king c4 would have been better, not necessarily. So the computer moves away from the center, and that affords black kind of just another move. I choose to go after the f pawn and, importantly, the advance of the f pawn. And, well, the computer now realizes c4 might have been a better move anyway. I bring my, it doesn't really matter because in neither event I'm bringing my rook all the way to the d file. And the point of this is, with my king at f7, I have the e5 pawns advanced covered. With rook at f3, I have the location of the f4 pawn and its advance covered. With a rook at d8, this king is hitting up against a force wall. I like to think of Obi-Wan Kenobi in episode 1, without any more spoilers than that. The king here is just, persona non grata on files D and up, or persona non grata on files D through H, really. And that leaves a bit of a zugzwang. Wherever white's king moves, or either pawn move, is going to lose it. I'm going to grab a pawn on the next move. And I mean, if the game weren't already super done, like right now, so yeah, you got this game in hand anyway. It's a good way to demonstrate this principle. And sometimes in serious time trouble, you want to know about these things. Mostly the force wall, and that the advance of either pawn is covered, and the position of one of the pawns is covered. So black is going to make hay. And that's the last of white having pieces on the board, and I want to just make sure not to try to throw a check while still in the grips of the white king. And smooth over to a7, rook a7, checkmate. All right. Well, without further ado, thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Gravitrons. I'm more gravity. Have a great night.